Well, good evening and welcome to everyone this evening. We've got a very diverse audience here tonight. We have an in-house audience, and welcome to all of you, and just as importantly we have an online audience which includes people from as far afield as Egypt, Washington DC and Europe, believe it or not. So Dave, welcome to the first Davidson XChange. We'll be doing a more formal introduction for you in a second, so you just sit there, gather your thoughts while these good people start to think about the questions they're going to be asking you. I'm your host for this evening. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Bruce Davidson, and I'm an Executive Director at Davidson, which is a leading workplace performance company in Australia. This webcast we're excited to bring to our audience, and I'm particularly excited because one of the great thrills that I had over the last 12 months was being involved in the recruitment of our guest, Dave Donaghy, here tonight. We're in for an exciting hour. If ever there is an environment in which the pressure is on in terms of creating high performance, in which there is weekly, if not daily, measurement of just how you're going against that, and an environment which it's every competitor is doing exactly what you're doing, it's got to be sport. So if anyone knows about high performance, I figure it's someone like Dave. But before we get underway, I'd like to do something most important and something very dear to my heart, and that's to welcome a very good friend of mine, someone who I have enormous respect for. At Davidson, we have a First Nations friendship plan, which is a conscious choice not to have a reconciliation action plan. I don't mean that in any way controversially. It's simply that I think the most important thing we can do in this country is embrace friendship, which connotes warmth, respect, true knowledge and affection for the most extraordinary culture on the planet, our Indigenous peoples. So I would love to welcome tonight Tani Lawton, who works with Davidson, who I've also had an association with in a couple of really interesting ways. I chair a wonderful organisation by the name of Yallery, which provides to Indigenous children from remote and regional areas of Australia the opportunity to attend the leading boarding schools in the country. And Tani was one of the recipients of those scholarships and absolutely excelled, so much so that I made it my mission to get her into Davidson. We share something else which is very special to me, because Tani is a proud Bidjara woman, and to those of you who don't know, that means she hails from Charleville, where I was born. So I could think of no one who I would rather throw to for our acknowledgement to country than one of Australia's most outstanding emerging Indigenous leaders, Tani Lawton.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah. Great. Bruce kind of cut my speech off a little bit, but thank you for that wonderful introduction. Yes, my name's Tani Lawton. I'm a proud Bidjara woman from Charleville, southwest Queensland. In 2010, I began secondary schooling at St Margaret's Anglican Girls' School here in Brisbane, Meanjin, on the north side, the Turrbal people's land. So since then, I've been very fortunate, as I'm sure many of you are here tonight, to be able to look back on some wonderful memories I've created on this beautiful country that I get to live and work on every day. For you, home might be going back to your apartment or your homestead after work or the boarding house. For us, for our mob, our idea of home is country, and the country that encompasses land, waterways, seas, skies and the ancestors. It's a relationship like no other, and it is grounded on mutual respect. At Davidson's, we use the land for the building space for our people to work and much other things. So we make sure we're adding value in other ways, like connecting with traditional mob here in Brisbane, the Turrbal and Yagara people. We're building partnerships with Yallery and also supporting First Nations people into meaningful employment. And so wherever I go in Australia, I always pay my respects and acknowledge my presence. It's something that my family taught me, a few words to myself, saying thank you, because this country has provided me with the opportunity to find work, make friends and create lasting memories. I am so grateful to be able to do that. And so on behalf of all of us tonight, I would like to formally acknowledge the traditional owners, the Turrbal and Yagara people of Meanjin, where we are gathered today. We recognise their continuing connection to land, the waterways, and pay our respects to the elders past, present, and I'd like to extend that to First Nations people present today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tani. Well, now we get down to the meat of the evening. Let me give you a quick introduction. He probably needs no introduction in that he holds one of the most high-profile CEO roles in the country, being the CEO of the only listed sporting franchise in the nation. Welcome to Dave Donaghy. Now, by way of background, Dave joined the Broncos this year, and he's overseen a number of key changes already to the Broncos. You'd have to have been asleep at the wheel not to understand that perhaps things weren't tracking as they traditionally had for the Broncos prior to Dave coming on board. And he's implementing a strategy of growth, and I'm pretty sure that there's a pretty clear mandate to get back to the finals and win a premiership somewhere not too far down the track. His most recent role prior to joining the Broncos was as CEO of probably the acknowledged current powerhouse of the NRL. And Dave, back up there in the corner, we have one of the most devout former clubs of yours fans in Donaghy. If you've seen some Mad Storm fans, I'm sure, but you've never seen one quite like this. So Dave was CEO at the Storm, but what was most impressive was he became CEO at the ripe old age of just 32. He oversaw incredible growth, both on field in terms of club performance, but also commercially. He also oversaw the expansion of the club into non-traditional areas such as hotels, and the acquisition of a majority-owned ownership in the Sunshine Coast Lightning, a netball team. He was the Storm's general manager prior to that, and strategy and communications. And he also did a stint for 3 years prior to joining the Storm at the Lions. So not only has he worked in two NRL franchises, but he's also worked in an AFL franchise. And I'd go so far as to say, Dave, you just won the hearts of probably about 100 people in Victoria who are no doubt watching us too. So he does know a bit about the AFL. It would have been an interesting period. That was under the leadership of Michael Voss as the coach at that time, and I'm sure you learnt things there too. Dave is also from regional Queensland, hailing from Gladstone originally. He holds a bachelor degree in journalism, and he commenced life as a journalist. He is married to Sharon and has 2 children. Hugh, he's just come from Hugh's parent-teachers evening. We might want to ask him a few questions about that later. And his daughter Pippa. He's a wonderful person, a very sincere man, and I've had the opportunity to see him in probably one of the most interesting and complex recruitments I think I'll ever be involved with, where he was the meat in the sandwich between 2 NRL powerhouses, and he handled that with great aplomb and dignity. So Dave, I've got a few questions for you, but welcome.
Thanks, Bruce.
Yeah.
Thank you. I might, before you jump in there, Bruce, I might just also acknowledge the traditional owners of the land in which we meet and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. And it's wonderful just having a couple of minutes with Tani just before I said to her, us country kids have to stick together. So it's terrific to see her flourishing. And you know, the Broncos, we run some amazing Indigenous programs. We reach out north of 50 schools. We run a women's mentoring program for about 3,000 Indigenous girls all through southeast Queensland, northern New South Wales, to the point where I think the average attendance rates for Year 12 girls with Indigenous girls in southeast Queensland schools is about 76%. I think kids that come through our program are north of 90% attendance rate and finish school. So it's terrific to see, and we're very proud of that role that we play in Indigenous Australia.
And you should be too, because I'm well aware of the work you do there, and it's quite extraordinary, and I know your personal passion for it. So a Gladstone boy moves to Brisbane, and yet you've spent nearly all of your adult life working in sport. It tells us something must go on beneath there that says to you that this is worth doing with your life. So who is Dave the man? Who do we meet if we see Dave at home? And what is this obsession you seem to have with making a mark in the world of sport?
Well, sport's a passion, I think, for most Australians, most Kiwis as well, any Kiwis online or in here. It's an extraordinary industry that, for me was really harnessed at a young age. I always remember when I was younger, reading those, I don't know if people remember those cricket almanacs and the World Cup cricket books, and I became a bit of a stats nerd when I was a kid. I was okay at sport. I was quite athletic, but had this drawing as well for the other side around looking at the analysis, even from a young age. That rolled into actually looking at MBA, believe it or not, for a kid from Gladstone. Used to get those weekly sort of newspapers and have a look at the stat box and followed that. Between competing and playing and the thrill you got from that to actually understanding a bit of the sport, that sort of manifested itself in an opportunity to come down to Brisbane, firstly to play football, which I wasn't great at, but I had an opportunity to relocate and to move out of Gladstone. I think originally I was probably destined to be an electrical apprentice at the Gladstone Port Authority. That was probably the calling for a young kid from Central Queensland, but took an opportunity, moved into an apartment by myself behind the Brisbane East at 17. I really learned to wake up to myself really quickly at that point, living by yourself, having to wash your own clothes, cook your meals, all sounds quite basic. But
I'm definitely introducing you to my kids.
But it's, it was an adventure. Took the opportunity to actually get into university, started in arts, had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do. Went to the University of Queensland, which is terrific. We live not far from there now. It's a wonderful facility. They're also great partners of the Broncos. Through that period, tried arts, tried politics, tried law, tried journalism. Found that I was okay at writing, Bruce. So ventured down that path and finished with a degree in politics and journalism, and sort of that plotted my path. But in terms of away from what I do, I've always seen sport, and a lot of young people ask me how you get into sport, or how you get a career in sport. Sport's not a job, it's a lifestyle. It's a real commitment, real sacrifice, and not just for you, but for your family as well, for your friends. There's certainly been periods in my life, I suppose, where I've had regrets around missing out on things. Certainly for me, moving forward, is just trying to be more conscious to actually have a much better balance, or bring my life more into my work. So being able to actually have friends along at the games and the like is a great way to catch up.
Don't worry, I think your kids from memory are 8 and 11, is that correct?
8 and 6.
8 and 6, sorry. By the time they're sort of 10 and 14, you'll be the coolest dad in the school. Don't you worry about that. They'll be spending time with you every weekend, and they'll want to be at every game. So tonight's about building high-performance teams, and you spent, as we've said, 3 years at the Lions, 10 years at the Storm. You had some interesting characters at each of those, I'm sure. I guess just reflecting back on that time, what is it you learned from each of those experiences about building high-performance teams, and particularly the Storm, I think, have been the benchmark?
Yeah, well, probably through the experience, there's a lot about what not to do as well as what to do. I was very fortunate from a position of timing, Bruce. Started at Storm the first time, again, started my working life, I suppose, as a journalist. Worked out that wasn't for me. Had an opportunity to do a role at Melbourne Storm where it was effectively 2 roles. So took a media comms role into a footy operations role. Someone, when I first started out my working life, said don't pigeonhole yourself, and probably took that a little bit too literally and bit off a bit more that I could chew when I started out in sport. But that were the things that you had to do to get an opportunity and to start. Storm had a few issues at the end of 2008. This was, for those rugby league followers up here, which is probably most people, it's a new phenomenon for me, having been in Melbourne and in AFL Heartland, so now being here and not having to actually say that anymore is a terrific thing.
Yeah, nice change.
But Storm had a few issues at the back end of 2008. Cameron Smith was suspended for a grapple tackle on Sam Friday, missed the grand final. The coach and the CEO at the time, with a few others, put out a bit of a dossier and ended up being sued for a considerable amount. They lost the grand final that year 40-0 and had some reputational issues. So I agreed to come in and work with them at that point, and certainly learn a lot in terms of the football program. At that point I was Frank Panisi's understudy and went on to become Frank's boss later on. Through people like Frank Panisi, Craig, it was a wonderful grounding, I suppose, in terms of how they pulled the right people together, set a plan, had everyone buy into that plan. There's certainly some rocky roads along the way, but that was what they were terrific at, and I took a lot from that. And I think in business now, to be able to apply that level of authenticity, and apply that level of motivation, I suppose, is something that was a lesson that I learned real early, which has held me in good stead. The AFL was terrific, very mature organisation, very mature in terms of their systems. Spent a lot of time working with their strategy staff and in the AFL around their data and their analytics, how they set about long-term growth strategies. Very like-minded to Japanese companies, thinking 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the track. And you can see that play out, how they've gone about it. Certainly for us, myself coming back up here and working with, we've gone down a path now at the moment, Bruce, working with the other NRL franchises and the QRL, and we'll bring the NRL with it, is about plotting a long-term path for rugby league in Queensland, which sounds straightforward and should have happened, but it's probably happened too much in isolation.
Yep.
So
you've just broken down about 45 things in terms of creating high performance in
sorry,
teams.
Bruce, jumping ahead.
No, not at all. Don't apologise, because it's just interesting. It's such a flow. But particularly, I think the thing that I just wanted to capture in that, and we might sort of think about a particular individual in this sense, because he must be the master of this. You mentioned getting everyone behind that sort of common vision. Whether it's a 40-year vision or 30-year vision in the case of the AFL, or creating that vision when it needed to be reset at the Storm. We see Bellamy, we see him on television. He's clearly a passionate man. There's telephones flying and drink bottles, and if you're a lip reader, I'm sure you're blushing. And yet he has such extraordinary following from his team. He must be a great leader. What is it that someone like Bellamy does to set that vision? Or if it's not Bellamy that you sort of go to in your mind, how do you go about doing that as a leader?
Yeah, I'm probably, I can't recall where I came across the saying, but it's certainly true with Craig, is that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I think for Craig, he certainly lives that. If you look at, say, Storm in Melbourne, they relocate a lot of players. So they've had 1, 2, maybe 3 at different points of Victorian-based players that have a local network, have family in Melbourne. Can really rely on that network which is established, whereas for most of the other players that are coming down, so you're talking 90+% of the playing group and most staff as well, they don't have that support network. So you've got to create that environment, that nurturing environment, to ensure that they know when they come down, and their parents know too, for the young men who come down to chase a dream, that they're going to be taken care of. So first and foremost, that's I think a real fundamental. It's quite easy for people to latch on to something in sport, which is partly why I love it. Is that you've got a premiership each year to win.
Quick. Yeah,
it is, and you can set that goal. You might not achieve it, and just because you don't achieve it doesn't mean it's been a disappointment or hasn't been successful. You've got to set those goals, and when you set them high, every now and then you'll fall over, but you'll learn from that. And that's what I think has been really impressive about not just Craig, but that organisation has been able to reinvent themselves when they've been at the top, and been able to, continually raise the bar. If you think of, Jack Gibson, a great former rugby league coach, has said the moment you stand still in rugby league is the moment you're getting past. Yeah. And it's so true. Yeah. And there must be elements too of being able to do something with players that others can't. And you think about some of the players that the Storm, for instance, recruited. I know there's a very keen Tigers fan in the audience here tonight who just bemoans the number of players, Josh Addo-Carrs. Is he going to point them out?
Well, he is our CEO, Trent McMahon, actually, just for those who are interested. He'll be crying in the corner. But the Storm was able to do things with players that others couldn't. And do you put it down to that winning of the heart first, and then the capturing of a higher order purpose in terms of something to aim for together? Yeah, certainly, and everyone has a role in that system, and that's the thing about sport, is that whether it's the thing about sport and the thing about how people perceive sport. So sport, in terms of the internal dynamics and the environment, it's all about a system. Whereas
if you believe everything you read or people talk about, it often comes down to one individual or one person. But that is quite, to me, that's quite disrespectful to everyone that goes in around it. And I would no doubt that the greatest coaches will say the same thing, because they can't be as great as they are if they don't have great players. So you've got to have great recruitment. They can't be performing as well once they come in if you don't have a great performance program. We're talking about young men between really our most of my staff, and we've got Kate Cullen, my general manager of people and culture here, who Chris and yourself did a great job putting in. You've got to have great people that'll come in and we'll take them to the next level. Back to the playing group, they're aged between 22 and 26, mostly earning probably $300,000 a year, with a lot of distractions, a lot of expectation. We expect them to be, tough as buggery on field and angels off field, and it's a real fine line to walk. So, we laud them for the aggression that they show on field, and then when they step off field, if there's even a minor indiscretion, which can be totally taken out of context, we jump down them, because it creates it serves a purpose around providing us with that entertainment, not just on field, but off field side of it, and probably the greatest soap opera in this country. Forget Neighbours, Bruce. The NRL and sport is just the greatest soap opera, and that's why people love it. That's why people engage in it and they thrive on it. And I think the whole system has to work, has to be totally aligned, be working at 101% every day to be able to get you to that level. And if it's not, you can quickly, especially if you've got a mature system, you quickly work out where the breakdown is and fix it.
Yeah. Now you took over at 32, as we said, and listening to you now, it's so clear that you understand the framework, you understand how to set that vision, you understand the dynamics of people that are involved in that system and the measurements that are needed and all the things that go with it. But at 32, you mustn't have had anywhere near the level of knowledge you have now. When you look back, what is it that you wish you'd known then? What did you get wrong? And what I guess, were the learnings along the way that you had to come to grips with before you could really start to see those improvements in team performance?
I was probably so young and naive enough to not worry about it too much. I think the benefit of being an internal candidate, if you like, when I was appointed at 32 held me in really good stead. I was able to know the people inside the business. I was able to understand the macroeconomics of the industry. I was able to understand how it all was pieced together effectively, the different dynamics of the relationships internally. I think often I see people come in from outside into sport, into key roles, and it's the distractions that get them in the end. And it's whether it's the politics or the relationships, or not sure how different parts marry up. So I think that was a real benefit to me. I almost knocked it back. Pippa at the time was 6 months, maybe. She was born end of 14, and I was appointed mid 15, and with no family support and 2 young kids under sort of 2.
Yeah, there would have been a pressure on the home front, wouldn't there?
Yeah, there was, and fortunately I had great support, and we took the risk that this opportunity might not come up again. But I leaned on people that have become great mentors of mine, but friends of mine. People like Ian Robson. Eddie Maguire was a really young chairman when he took over. Robbo was a really young CEO when he started at, I think, the Warriors. So there's great people like that. And then the people within Storm itself, Jerry Ryan owns Jayco, or is Jayco. And things that people like Jerry spoke about and that have really, I'll hold on to forever.
Can you share one or two with us? What sort of things are you thinking?
It's very simple, right? And I think that's the beauty of business when you keep it really simple, and sport, when you keep it so simple. And my business is quite a simple business, but it's all about your people. And that was just the one constant thing that Jerry just kept on throwing down my throat, was it's all about your people. Take care of your people, look after your people, and you'll get it back in spades. And certainly, it's an investment in your business when you do that, and it was something that I held hold on to really dearly, Bruce.
Now, there must have been a few people scratching their heads because this was widely publicised, and there were probably only a handful of people in Australia who actually knew what was going on, and just in this circumstance I happen to be one of them. But you were the meat and the sandwich between the Storm and the Broncos. It was very clear that the Storm wanted to retain you. It was very clear that they were actually at their ascendancy, and it was really clear that the Broncos weren't. So you had a choice to make to come to the Broncos at a time where they were in foreign territory. They actually won the wooden spoon, and yet you said, I'm going to pack up and forego this high-performing environment I'm in and come across to the Broncos. Why?
Move for the coffee.
Melbourne will not be happy with that statement. Sorry to everyone there.
It's we had a great time in Melbourne. I think I spent upwards of all up about 10 or 11 years, and it was a wonderful time in our life. It's a really cool city. It's a really vibrant city. My heart goes out to everyone at the moment that's been in a situation of lockdown for so long. We've got friends and family down there still that have really struggled, and it's been incredibly tough. And I know they'd love to be in a situation like this that we're in now. We're so fortunate to be able to meet in a circumstance and be here in person. It's been incredibly tough, and as I said, I wish them all the best. But love that time, Bruce. But for us, it was certainly first and foremost. I think when we were going through that process, and there was an opportunity to stay at Storm, but we had to work out where we wanted to live. And once you work that out and you put your family first and your life first, everything else became really clear after that. So we decided after 7 years in Melbourne, there was time to come back to the sunshine, and just so happened coincided with the opportunity where the Broncos were looking for a CEO after Paul White doing a great job for a decade, I think. So in sport too, the other side of it, and this can sound a little bit strange. I think when things are going really well, it can get a little bit monotonous and a little bit boring at times. There's always challenges, and there's always challenges around how you lift the bar, but it can be, you are chasing the same thing each and every year, so it can be quite Groundhog Day at different points. Yeah. Broncos presented a great challenge. It's a massive club, as you said before. It's the only club that's listed on the stock exchange. It's the largest club in the NRL. It won a wooden spoon. I don't know if you win a wooden spoon, but it took the wooden spoon last year, and but it's got all the ingredients there. There's great. When I walked in, there's terrific people. It's a world class facility. I think you said you've got people on the States on the call. A couple of years ago, having been to Staples and then the Lakers training base, and out to Barclays, and then the Nets training base, and a few of the other NFL teams and the like. The Broncos facility at Clyde Berghofer Centre is world class, and it means that we've got all the ingredients there. We've just got to come up with a really great plan, have great people, have real alignment internally, and go and get it. And that's certainly the exciting thing that we've got that's our opportunity. I'm super excited about it, and not a day goes by where I don't think I've done the right thing. It's terrific to be back in Brisbane. It's great to reconnect with some old friends and see my family a bit more than what we were in Melbourne. Yep. And it's a city that over the next decade is going to go up in leaps and bounds ahead of the Olympics and the opportunity that's ahead of it. It is a city.
Yeah, well, we'll get to the second franchise in a second as you start to talk about some of the opportunities and challenges ahead. But I imagine that one of the things that's difficult to do in the sporting environment is that you've got the on-field staff, if you like, the football team, and then you've got, in your case, an enormous team who do, as we've already touched on, some extraordinary work in the social responsibility domain. And then, of course, you've got what I would call the business and operational staff. How do you bring those diverse interests together? How do you actually get people feeling like there's a shared goal, if you've said that's where it all stems from?
Yeah.
And I would imagine too, with what had gone on at the Broncos, where it was told to me that the biggest story in Brisbane's history as far as the Courier Mail concerned was the 2011 floods, until the Broncos won the wooden spoon. So that media scrutiny, which is just here so oppressive, must have weighed on those teams and those individual teams within the Broncos and caused some tensions and perhaps even fractures. How do you pull that together?
Yeah, I certainly think there was a lot of hurt when I arrived. If I'm being brutally honest, there was some silos. There was some, I suppose, some scar tissues from the legacy issues and challenges that everyone's lived through. The playing group as well. That's a really tough experience to go through, and then to come out the other side and to reset and go again. That's tough. We've got a really diverse organisation, both across different departments, but also the roles that they play. We've got chartered accountants, we've got doctors, we've got surgeons, we've got lawyers, we've got sports scientists, we've got data analytics guys.
You've got front row forwards.
We've got front row forwards that are studying MBAs.
Yes.
So it's quite a diverse range, and as I said, we've got particularly in the playing group, we've got, if you like, risk takers, aged between 20 and 25, a lot of them, and then we've got really mature people, grown-ups, who have been in the business for 20 plus years, and we're incredibly proud that they're there and they want to be there and are making a terrific contribution each and every day.
And just to add to that diversity, you've also got Pacifica and that sort of cultural diversity too, haven't you?
Well, we've got 50 Indigenous staff members, of about 180. And I didn't realise this until I started, Bruce. Almost a third of our playing base through our history is our Indigenous athletes, which is unreal. We're incredibly proud, and the Broncos are a club in that space that doesn't just talk the talk; they walk the walk. There's a lot of groups that talk the talk, and they do a great job of that. But they don't walk the walk.
So you've got diversity in every form here. How do you bring it together?
We are absolutely going through that process right now. My natural style, I suppose, is to engage and consult and try and bring people along the journey. The other side of it could be that you just become a benevolent dictator and just say, this is what we're doing, and off we go, and you could do that too. That's not my style. So, we're working with a guy called Ben Crowe. I don't know if those people are aware of Crowe. I would certainly encourage, if you haven't come across him, he's got some great podcasts. We're paying a considerable amount to have Crowe come through and do a bit of work with us, but these podcasts are free and they're saying a lot of the same things. There's a tip there. Sorry, Crowe, if it might have cost you some business. But look, he's terrific with what he does. He did took a lot out of the work that he did with Richmond in sort of mid-2010s, and just saw that work and thought, well, if that was successful and we can fast track our development by bringing someone like him into our business to challenge us around how we go about our business and the aspirations and the goals, that's going to be a good thing. So using that as a hook, taking people along the journey, everyone has an opportunity to have a say. And they're doing that in different forms, so that's written, video, about their proudest moment of being a Bronco, why they became a Bronco. It's really around that why and that purpose and that sense of calling. And if you can create that connection and belonging, I think someone reinforced it the other day. They said the three parts of being a human that you need are security, shelter and food.
And the fourth one is?
Belonging.
Yep.
And it's something, again, that sporting organisations, the franchises, you've got that in spades.
Yep.
So if you can be really authentic around that, you can bring that to life, you can activate it, you can create something really powerful.
Yep. And
once you do that internally, take it externally.
Yep.
I think we've got 27,500 members this year, which for us is a disappointment. We want to get to 100,000. And I think there's a real opportunity there. I was sitting at the house we bought. We bought a place when we came back. We're fortunate to have...
His timing was exceptional, by the way, in terms of the house price rises.
I'll call it skyline views. We get to see the tip of the... This shows me, I've just come back from Brisbane. I was going to call it Eureka Tower. That's in Melbourne.
We'll call it that if you like.
So I was sitting out there on the deck, and my daughter's sitting on my lap, and she said, "Oh, Dad, all those people out there in that city." I said, "Yep, they're all Broncos fans." And I thought, okay, that's terrific, because that's, she's picked that up already, and that for me is something that's the opportunity there for us, that if we can create that sense of connection and belonging, not everyone will want to come along. We get that. There's a lot of opportunity, and there's a lot of we're sport for choice up here, great weather, beaches and all the rest of it. But if we can create that sense of purpose, that sense of belonging, have the best match day experience, really competitive on field, and just create, again, bring that soap opera to life on a match day and make everyone feel good and better when they leave, the opportunities for our footy club are endless.
So that's an interesting point, because whilst your daughter's looking out on that, there's a bunch of fellas sitting over at Redcliffe and out at East and a few other places out at Ipswich, plotting and planning to divide that for you. And I see your chairman, Carl Morris, and you yesterday meeting with Peter Vlandis and saying, well, we'll welcome that opportunity and the challenge. How are you going to approach that from the perspective of ensuring that the Broncos remain at the heartland of Brisbane?
Yeah, first and foremost, I think in terms of a 17 team, there's got to be a process. The NRL's still going through that now, and what we've been really clear to Peter and Andrew is that happy for you to go through that. Now, we don't have a vote in terms of whether it goes ahead or not, but certainly we'll be able to have our say and voice our opinion on it, and our opinion will be based on fact and data. So what the numbers look like, what it means in terms of impact on our club. But I think you can look at it as a negative, but if they end up going ahead and doing it anyway, you might as well look at it as a real challenge and an opportunity, and what that means for you. So what it means, Bruce, for us is we've got to get better. We've got to ensure that we're activating all of our community programs in a way that it inspires young kids to want to be Broncos fans, that want to play for the Broncos, men and women. We've got to ensure that we're retaining and creating an environment inside our organisation where the best staff want to stay and are in a world-class, high-performance environment that is delivering sustainable success each and every year. We've also got 30 years of a head start, which I think holds us in reasonable stead. I can understand the potential appeal, and I say potential until you see the data. From a broadcast perspective, having 2 Brisbane teams or a game in Brisbane each week. So it'll certainly be interesting where they, if they and where they decide to put that team. But if you look globally, you look at Manchester with United and City. You look at some of the local derbies, Lakers, Clippers, the Scottish leagues, Liverpool, you get Everton. There's some huge global rivalries that you say that if done well and approached in a strategic business-like fashion, there should be an opportunity for growth for the Broncos, and obviously for a new team.
Yeah.
But I think, Bruce, just rounding off, it's got to benefit the existing shareholders, which are the clubs, and it's got to benefit the game as well. It can't be a drain on the game, otherwise it shouldn't go ahead.
Yep. No, well, it sounds like bring it on is the answer to that. When you arrived as CEO, there was a little report sitting on your desk, and it was a tech snapshot of the Broncos. A number of the people in our audience, both online and here tonight, are from the tech world. Where do you see tech going in the sporting world, just out of interest?
I'm super excited about this space, because I think in Australia with tech and data and big data, I think we do it so poorly.
Yep.
I think part of it, Bruce, is that there's too many third parties on the way through, and whether it's third parties being, this is in terms of ticketing suppliers or membership or merchandise, and it may not be their fault. It may be the result of a poorly worded SLA a contract that's not being followed up internally or externally. I think there's huge opportunity in that space to take a lot of that back, or do it better in partnership with those parties, and to get to know your customer a whole lot deeper and a whole lot better, to make quicker, better decisions.
You know what I love about that answer? Your first comment as the CEO of a sporting club is not to go to the analysis of players, which is also a huge growth area in sport, but you're thinking about the customer, and that says a lot about you. Now that tech report was produced by another rusted on. I don't think you've got any chance of losing him. Well, it's interesting. His name's Rusty, and he's rusted onto the Broncos and has been all his life. And for those of you who don't know Russell Haynes is part of the Davidson Technology Consulting arm, but he authored that report. Rusty, you've also had an interesting career. You've led some of the biggest tech remediation programs in the world, where you've walked into Japan or London, wherever it may have been, and had to put underperforming teams right. I'm just wondering, sitting there, having listened to Dave and the sort of themes that he's talking to, and being someone from the technology world, as so many of our audience are here tonight, what are your thoughts? Is there similarities or differences between high performance in the tech world and high performance in the sporting world?
Thanks, Bruce. Yeah, look, I had the opportunity to sit with Dave and have a chat about this the other day over a coffee. And high-performing teams in a sporting situation, I gained a lot of insight. I was talking about high-performance teams in an IT environment where I've been for the last 40 years, and I think that the end of the conversation was that there's pretty much no difference, right? A high-performing team, we both agreed, was all about the people. And the capital that we have, whether it be in a sporting situation or in an IT situation, the capital is the people. Many years ago, as a project manager, I would, and as other project managers and project directors and program managers would want to bring a team into a room and have them in that room and put the project plan up around the walls. And that gave you the control and the ability to form a team. And that was quite interesting. But this day and age, the world has changed in the last couple of decades. Just going around trying to get IT projects and transformations and cloud migrations back on track, you first of all need to understand where the teams are, because they're all virtual. It's very rare that they're all in the same room. They're in a different country, in a different city, and therefore they've got a different culture. There's different behaviour, there's different contracts, different suppliers. But again, the high-performing team, there's a similar set of ingredients. You have to bring a framework in, and I heard you mention the word framework. You have to lead, and leadership in sporting environments and IT environments are extremely important. You have to give people a sense of purpose, and that sense of purpose can be set out in an IT environment with a charter. The parallel was, again, when you said you have to have a plan to be able to follow, and someone's got to set that out. And when you're putting the team together, you've got to be mindful of all the challenges and the pitfalls and the things and the reasons why they don't perform. And so being able to get in under the covers and run a diagnostic and find out where the challenges are these days are quite interesting, because it's not just, as it was a long time ago, cost, scope and time. These days it's agile and it's Kanban and it's Jira and it's outsourcing and insourcing and vendor management, and so there's a lot of reasons why teams don't perform in the IT environment and why they don't feel good to get up and come to work. And so to be able to then put a framework in place, put a charter in place, respect for the individual, bit of leadership, some rules of engagement, and then a sense of purpose doesn't come because you've bought it or you've put something in place. A sense of purpose comes when you then start leading and you engage that framework and you follow those principles, and then the people come and they join that framework and they join that charter and they get a sense of purpose because they feel like they're involved and they feel engaged. And when you feel that, the team meetings change, and then you don't have to worry about what the answers are, because it's the people that will bring the answers to the table because they feel engaged. They want to be part of something. They want to get that outcome. And when you're in that situation in an IT sense, and I'm sure it's the same in a sporting sense, then it feels good. And that high-performing team makes it enjoyable to come to work every day.
Yeah. Well,
And that's what I would say would be the parallels.
Yeah, well, there are clearly some parallels there. Now, our online audience has been fielding questions too. Please continue to do so. Remember, it's the button underneath me. I know that sounds weird sitting here saying that, but it is apparently. Please shoot them in, and if we might just kick off with some questions from the audience, Dave, if you're open to that. Feel free to ask questions about the NRL, about experiences there, or about high-performing teams. All are welcome. Have we got any questions from the audience?
No, I've got one. Frank, firstly, thanks for the welcome. Secondly, Queensland population town, 40 grew up. Hey, talk about sense of family. When you're almost importing players into Melbourne to play, you were talking about family involvement and giving them that sense of family while they were there. How do you achieve that when their family might be 2,000 miles away, for example? Yeah? Like, how did you make them feel part of that family?
Yeah, as I said before, there's a wonderful team down there, and there's a wonderful team in the Broncos as well that does a similar thing with a lot of, say, New Zealand kids that come across. If you like, first and foremost, it's about understanding who they are and where they are in terms of their life cycle, I guess. So some kids will be ready to live with friends or other players. Some will be ready to, or will need to live with, say, a host family. So understanding that, putting them in the right environment so that they can have the best possible experience at home to support the best possible experience they're going to have in a footy sense. They train incredibly hard when they first come in, especially for the young guys in a pre-season. It's incredibly tough. So their first pre-season, second pre-season is almost as difficult or taxing mentally as it is physically. So you've got to ensure you've got the right support network there to do so. And then it's a case of different touch points along the way. So whether it's all led by, mostly the clubs now will have professional wellbeing services. So that's 2, if not 3 wellbeing managers. They'll take the lead on looking after their care, their pastoral care, referring them to other additional support networks or services, providing them with the right accommodation, and ensuring that they're learning life skills along the way. How to change a tyre. Sounds ridiculous, but they're the type of life skills that
I'm definitely introducing to my kids now.
So how to cook a proper meal, how to engage people like ourselves that are in rooms like this, if they're at a corporate event, so that they're comfortable in that experience. And then the pastoral care around it, so checking in, and as I said before, the different touch points that do that, whether it's the coaches, the senior players, the mentor network that they've got, whether it's current players or past players, all go into ensuring that you've got a really well-oiled system to provide that player and the families with a real confidence that you're taking care of them as a person before a footballer.
We might throw to someone who's online tonight. Rel, have we got a question from one of our online audience members?
We certainly do, Bruce. Thank you. This question is from Stuart in Sydney. Thank you, Stuart. So, Dave, aside from the team winning, what are the indicators you look for in measuring whether the team is high performing?
Great question, Stuart. I'll give you the example around, say, the Broncos when I started. I was there for 7 weeks, and we made a couple of really significant changes. And that was the result of a couple of reviews. It was the result of a number of discussions with people inside the club, and it was also through, I suppose, knowledge, or my own knowledge and understanding of the industry and where performance sits. We could see that we were off the boil. We could see that we weren't fit enough. We could see that we weren't able to compete for long enough with other teams. So it became apparent that we had to make a change, or a couple of changes at that point. And that wasn't a result of these people who departed the business being bad people, being bad at their jobs. It was just a result that we got to a point where we needed to freshen up and we needed to make a change and bring in, I suppose, a few change agents to set a different direction or a different path. That can go one or two ways. It can go a point where it goes further south, in which case you're in a bit of strife, or it can go the other part where you get a response, and a real positive response. And often that's driven by the people that are either in there or the people that are being brought in the business to disrupt. Pleasingly for us, we saw a really positive change and a positive turnaround to the point where I think at the start of the year we had through the first 15 rounds, the Broncos were 3 wins, 12 losses, for and against a minus 251. Through the last 9 games of the season, we were 4-5 with a points differential of +1. The home games that we played was we were 4 wins, 2 losses. We played all our games at Suncorp, mind you.
Yeah.
But there's some things in that too where if you dissect it a bit further, you can see then clearly there's a mental challenge around some little things. So whether that's being based in a different locker room, different fields, different jerseys. So psychologically, you've got to address that. Again, back to the system. You can, once there's a mature system and a system which is driving results, if there's an area and a specific area that you can see a breakdown, you can address that and be really clear around that. But that's, again, approaching it from a position of a football program being a system and not looking at what, a lot of organisations and sporting organisations do and can do, which is looking at a messiah to come in to fix everything.
Yeah.
To me, that's a very outdated model and won't work.
When do you know you've got them? What do you see when you say this team's starting to work?
I think when you see that, or for say Brisbane this year, seeing their resolve and ability to grind their way through a game, little things in games about how they're holding up in a tackle, how many metres they're getting in a set, how many players are running back in a line at a different point from a kick chase. There's those little moments in a game that you can pick up. Again, I'm not the coach, I'm the CEO, but you can see those.
That's just discretionary efforts there.
There's also the intangibles as well. That's the energy.
Yeah.
So at Clive Berghofer Centre, there's 3 levels. I'm in the fortunate position where in my office you can hear the gym music blaring through, no matter what time of day it is. It's techno, country, it's R&B, rap, and some heavy stuff too, Bruce.
Over you 2 of those.
Well, it's now become background noise. I can barely even hear it now. But you get this sense of energy that's coming through, and certainly from the point where we, if you like, hit a reset during the course of the year. After that point, you could really feel that positive energy going through, and that was reinforced through some surveys we did, some discussions with the senior players, and direct feedback they were having with the coaches, and then your data and GPS numbers as well, which demonstrated a positive change.
Yeah, good stuff. Have we got another one there, Rob?
Yeah, absolutely. This one's from Tyler, who's in Melbourne, and it's focused on habits, Dave. It is said you don't rise to the level of your goals, but rather you fall to the level of your systems or habits. What are your personal habits to excel at a high level, and how do you translate that across to the greater organisation?
Just an easy one for you there.
Yeah, thanks Tyler.
Thank you, Tyler.
Did I used to work with Tyler? I'll go back to the work we're doing at the moment with the purpose and the vision and values work. Values are great, but often they can just be words on a wall. And I think we've all been through those exercises where you turn up and you go, and it's great for the morning, and then you go, oh my God, I'm still here. You're laughing, what's really important is those underlying standards and behaviours, because they're the things, they're the real meaty things that you can actually assess yourself and assess your staff on, and assess the whole organisation as to whether you're upholding those standards. As I said, values are great. It is an important process, but the standards to me are so much more important. In terms of habits, it's a real challenging thing in this job because no 2 days are the same. I didn't think during the week I'd have to deal with a Royal Rumble outside in Brisbane during the week, and things like that just pop up from time to time for whatever reason. But certainly I'll always do 2 things. One, I'll get up at 5 a.m. and try and do some exercise because it gives me great clarity and helps me get a clear head for what's coming up. And then 2, I'll always make it. I won't always get there, but I'll try as hell to get there. I'll try to get there for dinner time with the kids. Fortunate we're 15 minutes from work now, and you can always load up the computer after you finish. Failing that, I'll always get there for dinner. For bedtime. I haven't tonight, but always get there for bedtime. We'll ask 4 things of our kids to keep that connection. So, best part of your day, worst part of the day, what did you learn, and what was the funniest part? Yeah. And they're just the little things, and the kids always ask you the same thing, and just really keeps you grounded. And I think in this industry, which is quite a fantasy land, and this quite a I suppose a lot of people, or external people, talk a high pressure environment. Sort of see it as the environment I've kind of become used to. Yeah. It helps round you off, which is really important to get that sense of balance.
Yeah. Well, they're good habits. Anyone else from the live audience here with a question? Surav. Just wait 1 sec, we'll get a microphone to you, Surav.
Thank you. Firstly, really interesting conversation. Thanks again. The question I have is, you touched the point about running a business and effectively running, a business effectively in terms of not just a sporting club. How do you split your time and your focus on business growth, new business, your memberships, sponsorships, etc., versus core business, improve the efficiency of the team? It's a very different energy level, but it's a bit of a catch-22, right? So what's your perspective on it?
It's a great question. Thank you for asking it, because I suppose that I'll draw on when I started again. It was clear a big gap in our program or our business was the football program. So that meant that I had to spend and inject myself and spend a lot of time there. I've been able to, since, again, the recent period, some key appointments, particularly our head of football, Ben Eichen, been able to pull myself out of that a little bit more and focus on some other parts of our business that probably need a bit more attention now. So I think for me, it's been approaching it in cycles. Also been approaching it in cycles of where the year is, or where the season is for us. So, we had to put a real priority and focus on the football product. We had to turn that around. We had to provide, we're many different businesses, but we're certainly in the business of selling hope. So we had to provide that hope and get the program back on track, so across the course of the off-season we could talk to prospective members, sponsors, about the opportunity that's ahead, and better times are coming. So that was incredibly important. Now we're in a cycle of building out our budgets. So it's looking at, as Bruce mentioned before, around setting a growth agenda in the commercial part of the business. We've got terrific membership and corporate support, but we know we can grow that considerably. And that's all about investing in our data and tech systems. It's about investing in resource and capability. We're launching a program next year called Broncos in Business, which will be a business network program next year, which Brisbane doesn't have, and will be a great connector between the top end of town, some SMEs. Won't have a lot of connection or a lot of linkage back to rugby league itself, but we'll provide terrific first-class events, which will give us a point of difference in this market, and it's super exciting. So there's things like that we can now turn our attention to that the season's done, and then it's all about building up. It's interesting in our industry at the moment, there's a bit of a lull, because we're all sort of waiting for the fixture to come out, which is the back end of October. So there's a lot of work being done, but can only get done to a point. You need that period or point in time to drop to be able to put everything on a map and then just to hit the go button. But for us, it's a great period to build budgets, finalise strat plans, department plans, all the normal things in business that we get as well when we get to press pause on the footy season.
As one of Australia's brightest young strategists, you got very excited when you started saying strat plans. We've got time for one more question. I think it's 7 o'clock. I can hear the bells ringing behind me. We have an online audience who are no doubt being very patient. One more down the front here.
Would it be correct to say that high-performance teams starts by recruitment or starts from recruitment? And if so, what are the challenges you face in recruitment, especially in today's environment? And what should be the role of technology to help you overcome those challenges?
I think let's talk staff. Technology's been great for that, because we get a bird's eye view into people's lives straight away about how they conduct themselves on social media. I think for a lot of people the penny hasn't quite dropped there, but at some point it probably will.
Yeah,
Bruce is nodding there.
Yeah. It's just alarming to see what people put up.
So that certainly has been a bit of a game changer in terms of being able to bring people in who fit our culture. We talk a lot about bringing in good people, but it's very hard to what actually makes a good person. If I can succinctly put it, it's people that will leave their egos at the door and buy into something greater than themselves. That's a great part of being part of a footy club. In terms of players, great challenge for us in terms of recruiting players is the free agent market. It's 24/7 free agency. For the people in Melbourne that understand AFL really well, we don't have trades, we don't have a draft period. It's quite unregulated when you compare it to that. So there's a lot more competition. So you've got to be incredibly well planned. But again, in terms of technology, the availability of data sets, video tools whereby if I show you my phone right now, I can show you the next latest and greatest player through the huddle system. It's incredible how that's transformed recruitment and retention. But even so, if I had a choice of having, there's two great players and one's clearly better than the other, but has the other one's of greater character, I'll get the person of greater character because I'll back our program to take them above that person. I think they'll be, a great asset for our club. And I'll just probably close then, Bruce. They say, the thing that kills premierships is distractions. And so you've got to absolutely get the right people in, because if you don't, it'll cause you countless distractions.
Yeah, absolutely, and we've seen that in football time and again, haven't we? Now, we've still got a number of online questions there. We're not going to get to them tonight, and I apologise to everyone online for that, but we will try and get back to you with answers to your queries. To everyone who's come in here tonight in person, thank you so much, but most particularly, Dave, thank you to you. I reckon we could keep going for another hour and a half with the questions that are there. Your insights are amazing. It's pretty clear, I think, to everyone in this room and in our audience why it is the Broncos chose you. You're so clear on what it is you need to do, what creates that performance, and you've got a genuine authenticity and passion that underlies it all. I suspect there's a little bit of the Bellamy factor in that too for those who get to work with you. So from everyone here tonight, not only thank you, but our sincere best wishes for success in this role. I've got no doubt, I think it's assured, it's just a question of time, and we'll be seeing great things from the Broncos, and I think it'll be something you and your team, and I know that Kate's here tonight too, who'll be so enormously proud. Your generosity in coming is hugely appreciated. We've got a small gift to you, which I'm told is tucked strategically around the corner here. It's probably too late to get home for Pippa and Hugh, but it might not be too late to share one of these with Sharon when you get home.
Thanks,
so
Bruce.
Dave,
Thanks
thank you
very
so
much.
much.
Appreciate it.